How's it going, guys? And as promised, I am here with the start of what's going to be an extensive WWE video game marathon. Now, I've already reviewed WWE 2K14 and WWE 13 on this channel, so you could go find those videos. But going forward, I am going to be reviewing mostly WWE video games. You know, I usually review a lot of different types of video games here on this channel, aside from my wrestling reviews. But I am going to be focusing on wrestling games mostly going forward. This is probably going to last for quite a few months. Now, I might review Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, the DLC that's coming out. That game is near and dear to my heart, as is DBZ, so expect that one to be just a little deviation, but that's pretty much going to be it as far as non-wrestling games are concerned. So how are we going to kick this one off? Well, I was going to do WWE 12, but I decided I'm going to save that for later. Definitely going to be a retrospective on that one, but for now we are going to be looking at Smackdown vs. Raw 2011, the very last Smackdown vs. Raw game. This is a pretty popular entry in the series. This is the end of pretty much the Smackdown series, because even though it's Smackdown versus Raw, it is still Smackdown. It is still a continuation from the very first Smackdown on the PS1. Arguably so, but I feel that it is. But no matter how you look at it, it's still the end of an era for Smackdown versus Raw. Now, even the 2K games and WWE 12 and 13 share a lot in common with this game and the others. But we will be getting to that in this review and in future reviews and retrospectives. So guys, without further ado, this is going to be Smackdown versus Raw 2011 in what's going to be a pretty in-depth retrospective. Hope you guys all enjoy the video. So let's get right into it. So the first thing we see when we start up the game is a rather bland start screen with John Cena ready to attitude adjust Randy Orton right through a table. And I kind of think back to the older SmackDown games, and they just had better looking, more stylish intro screens. This just kind of seems like they slapped a random photo on there. And I know, it's two of the biggest stars in the company, John Cena and Randy Orton, but it just doesn't really grab you right away. So we go past that screen and whoa, we're already in the ring. And yes, I know we had the training facility in SmackDown vs. Raw 2010. I am currently playing that game, but this is quite a surprise because, how many games are you taking right to the main menu right away? But this is a pretty handy feature because you can test out your moves, you can practice with a brainless AI, or you can give the AI an actual brain and you could practice counters. So it is useful, but it is a little bit annoying that you have to bypass this every single time you turn on the game. There's no way to turn off this feature. But it's only one button press, so it's only a minor inconvenience, thankfully. And on the main menus, we've got The Miz. This is when The Miz was rising to superstardom. Next year, he would be in the WrestleMania main event against John Cena at WrestleMania 27. And I know a lot of my subscribers are not big fans of The Miz. Not everyone anyway. I am. I like him, but a lot of people don't. So the menus do change as you play the game and you return to them. But every time you start the game, you will be treated to The Miz, so just get ready for that if you're not a big fan of him. Now, one thing misleading that this game does is it claims that a lot of the modes and match types are new, but they really aren't. It's just they have reworked physics, and the game does have a really good feel to it. I've played a little bit of Smackdown vs. Raw 2010 so far, and we're going to be doing a retrospective on that pretty soon. This game definitely has a better feel for it. Any awkward feeling moments have been pretty much replaced. This is definitely a smoother feeling game than 2010, that's for sure. But all these things like ladder, Hell in the Cell, all these match types, they're not new. The only thing that is new is the match creator does let you mix and match certain match types together. And this is a pretty novel idea. You can have a last man standing Hell in a Cell match. You can have a an elimination chamber first blood match. Whatever your fantasy may fancy, you can do it here, and there is a lot of creative freedom to be had. Of course, there's some restrictions, and none of the future games would remedy this, unfortunately, but it is pretty vast. There are definitely different variations that you could play around with, and the inclusion is appreciated nonetheless. Now, let's talk about the gameplay and how the game plays. I talked about certain kinks being worked out, but the overall grapple system and the controls have been changed from 2010. So, grapples are centered around the right analog stick once again, and whether or not your opponent is groggy. Gone is the combination of pressing the right shoulder button with the right analog stick for a strong grapple from the previous games. SVR 2010, that was its last appearance. Now all you need to do for a strong grapple is get the opponent in a groggy state. And if you're wondering, I'm playing the Xbox 360 version here. Also, the Ultimate Control grapples that also made their last appearance in last year's game are gone as well. Things are similar but shifted around though, because for a weak grapple, you have to press the right analog stick to initiate the grapple and then press another direction to perform a move, whereas last year only one flick of the stick was needed for a weak grapple anyway. But strong grapples this year only need a single flick when the opponent is groggy. Since I never was a big fan of pressing two buttons at the same time, I would definitely say 2011 has 2010 beat in the controls department. It just feels better, it feels more natural, and just feels generally less obtrusive. Now, I want to talk a little bit about this roster and the plethora of legends that we have here. We've got Stone Cold Steve Austin. I'm not a very big fan of how his face looks here. Doesn't look that good. The Rock is here. Superfly Jimmy Snuka, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, Shawn Michaels, and RVD. Yes, that's right. RVD is in this game, and he was actually in Impact Wrestling, TNA at the time, but that didn't seem to matter because we've got RVD, and he even shows up in the Road to WrestleMania mode as well. So I was pretty happy about that. But they were definitely not cheap with the legends this year around. We've got quite a few here. And as far as the regular roster goes, we have all our usuals. We have John Cena, Randy Orton, as I mentioned before, Triple H, Big Show, Undertaker, you know, the usual cast. But we have a lot of wrestlers that we would not be seeing again for quite some time, or in some cases never again in a WWE video game. This would be Matt Hardy's last game for a while, Mike Knox's last appearance ever, Vance Archer, who is now Lance Archer in AEW, this is his last game and his only game. Shelton Benjamin wouldn't be reappearing for a few years. Finlay is gone after this. Crime Time, never to be seen again. Mickey James, David Hart Smith. So it's really funny when you take a look at WWE 12 and you see how many people are actually missing or how much the roster has changed. Now, of course, they had to be very cheap with the DLC and Nexus. Now, I get that they kind of came in a bit late on the main roster, but they were there in NXT. I guess they didn't know that they were going to be used in a major storyline at the time. But you can download certain Nexus members, those being Wade Barrett, Justin Gabriel, and David Otunga. The others, such as Daniel Bryan, are nowhere to be found. And you want to know what's fucking horrendous? The very fact that Bret Hart, yes, Bret Hart, who wrestled at WrestleMania 26, which is the very WrestleMania that this game's story mode, their Road to WrestleMania, revolves around, he's not in this game by default. You can't even unlock him. If you want him, you had to pay up or you needed to pre-order the game. Yeah, you have to either download him as DLC. It actually took months for them to get him on the DLC list. as part of a DLC pack, or you had to just be one of the lucky ones who had the foresight to pre-order him. And I thought that this was pretty inexcusable. Ooh, you want Bret Hart? Well, you got to do one of these things if you want him. I mean, like, come on. Remember how it just used to be like, you know, if they had a wrestler, he'd be in the game. You know, either he was or he wasn't. But DLC, see, this is why I've ranted on DLC so many times. It's just so annoying. They knew a lot of people were going to play as Bret Hart, so they conned a lot of people into having to pre-order the game if they wanted to do that. Or if they wanted to wait, they had to wait a few months and then pay up. Jeez. Well, anyway, I think that they've got quite a few divas this time around. We've got Beth Phoenix, we've got Mickie James, we've got the Bellas, Eve, Maurice, Gail Kim, Melina. We've even got Michelle McCool. And for some reason, once again, DLC, they don't have Layla. And this is also pretty annoying because she was right there alongside Michelle McCool as Lade Cool, involved in some pretty major storylines at the time. Michelle McCool couldn't go 2 feet without having Layla at her side at the time. So, again, DLC strikes again. But I think this is more divas than we've had in any other game, to my knowledge. I mean, I kind of seen from the games that I played, they would usually be pretty picky with the divas that they would choose, but here we've got pretty much all of them. It wouldn't be until the 2K games where they would pretty much make sure they had all of them, but at this time it was a sight to behold. So let's talk about my favorite part of any WWE video game, the story mode. This is usually where I spend most of my time. I love seeing what stories are being offered each and every year these games come out, and we're treated to quite a few good ones. So let's start off with the first one. We've got John Cena, and he's pals with MVP this time around, and it's not really apparent why this is, but it turns out that they are actually continuing the storyline from John Cena's road to WrestleMania from SmackDown vs. Raw 2009, because there is a brief reference to Better Than Utopia, which was a faction that MVP started in the 2009 game. And there were special rules where there would be a 5 count. So basically what the whole storyline revolves around is Randy Orton becomes the evil GM of Raw. He takes over for Stephanie McMahon. He's having problems with Stephanie and he manages to unseat her. And he runs roughshod on the show, more specifically on John Cena and MVP. And you come to an impasse where you have to decide if you rather have a shot at Randy Orton's title by hitting MVP with a chair, or you can choose to do nothing and let MVP hit you with the chair. And this is the way how the story is supposed to go. You're supposed to play it as a babyface, and the story works out the way it's intended. Consider it to be kind of like the canon storyline. But if you choose to hit MVP with the chair, many members of the roster will revile you, and they will have disdain for Cena. Oh, Cena, how could you do such a thing? But this is a really good story, and I like that they played up the rivalry between John Cena and Randy Orton that was going on at the time in WWE. Well, it was the previous year in 2009 when they had a whole host of matches together. And I really dig that reference that they made to a previous SmackDown vs. Raw game. It kind of gives the game's continuity, and I like that. Now for Undertaker's story, this is my favorite road to WrestleMania in this game. I think that this is how you want to do a story in these games. It's so much fun. There is just one thing about this. You only get to choose to play as certain superstars in this mode. You could either play as your creator wrestler, which is great for CAW fans, but for WWE superstars, you only get to choose between John Morrison, R-Truth, Dolph Ziggler, and Kofi Kingston. I would have liked to go at it as CM Punk or someone else, but I mean, this is okay. I guess it had to do with the recorded lines given to the wrestlers. You know, they couldn't voice everybody for these stories. Now, I played through this story once as Morrison and then again as R-Truth, and I have to say, I really preferred my playthrough as R-Truth. I thought that he just delivered these lines a little bit better. They're all delivering the same lines, but R-Truth just seemed like he fit into this story a little bit better. But when you choose one of these characters, they will be obsessed with defeating The Undertaker at WrestleMania and ending his streak. And it's really cool, all the different mind games that The Undertaker plays on you throughout the story. You'll see a whole arena full of caskets. The Undertaker will even mess with your controls during one match. You'll be wondering why you can't pull off a signature, and it's actually intended that way. But one of my favorite parts of this road to WrestleMania is when Undertaker first starts messing with you, you're walking in the backstage area and everything is on a slant, and you turn one way and you see a druid, you turn another way and you see another druid, you go into the locker rooms and it's filled with druids. I thought that this was really cool. It was spooky, and the music that plays in the background, this right here felt like a survival horror game, something I never felt playing a wrestling game before. And after you think that you're done with being completely spooked, you'll have a 15-man battle royal with Undertaker's druids, and you have an entire arena full of druids. And I like how this is all in your head, and after you win, you find out that you are actually wrestling members of the roster. But you can actually unlock one of the druids, and you can unlock this arena. This is definitely a high point in this story, but the zaniness is not over yet, because then you run into Kane, and he tells you that you need to get the Undertaker's urn and start capturing lost souls, and you'll be sucking up souls into the urn. And you'll even run into Paul Bearer's spirit, which leads to some wackiness. This is just totally over the top, and it really takes advantage of the Undertaker's character and all the other characters like Bearer and Kane surrounding him. Stephanie also tells you that you have to do things to try to best The Undertaker. Like, you have to wrestle a lot of his former opponents. You have to wrestle Shawn Michaels, Jake the Snake Roberts, a match against Superfly Jimmy Snuka. I really like how they were playing off of The Undertaker's WrestleMania record and finding different ways for you to get ready for Taker. Just so much care put into this story. I really loved it. It was a lot of fun. One of the things that really surprised me was at the end of the story, if you don't defeat The Undertaker at WrestleMania, the Druids will come out and you'll get to attack them, but in the end, they'll end up overtaking you and you'll become a Druid. Yes, they transform you into a Druid, and that's the way how the story ends. Unless you decide to play it again and defeat The Undertaker. So I really thought that that was kind of cool that there's an alternate ending. Like, that's it. It doesn't even say try again. The credits roll, and that's the end of your story. The Undertaker has not only defeated you, but stolen your very identity? Ooh, that was kind of creepy. Chris Jericho's story, it is fun. But it's not really the best. I think one of the greatest things about it is the dialogue. I really like a lot of Jericho's wisecracks that he makes, and when he gets into fights with Stephanie McMahon, you know, I think a lot of those dialogue exchanges were very well done. Jericho really seemed like he was having a good time here. The story itself isn't anything special. You're basically looking to come off of a losing streak and defeat Triple H for the championship, and HBK and Big Show get involved. Not bad, but I think they could have made this one a bit better, a little bit more exciting, especially compared to the other stories that the game offers. I just didn't feel like there were a lot of highlights from this one other than Jericho's performance. I did like how they recreated the highlight reel with Jericho smashing Triple H's face into the Jeritron, and they do acknowledge that he did do it to Shawn Michaels, and since Triple H is the other member of DX. It's sort of fitting. But what the fuck? Triple H actually ends up burying you at the end of WrestleMania, even if you win. That is so Triple H. Oh man, that was a little bit ridiculous, I have to say. Like, Jericho couldn't come out on top at the end of Mania, even though he actually won the match. I get it, he's a heel, but this is Jericho's story, not Triple H's. Rey Mysterio has a great road to WrestleMania. Here you could actually turn Rey Mysterio heel when the choice is given to you. So it starts off with Rey Mysterio getting into a pretty big car accident, and now he has amnesia. And Jack Swagger is palling around with you. He's being your friend, but he's known for being a heel. And it seems like he's hiding something, and Evan Bourne is telling you this, and everyone also around you is telling you that you're acting different. It's finally revealed that Jack Swagger actually rammed your limo with his car. And at this point, you can either choose to side with Swagger and forgive him, or you could tell Swagger to go fuck himself, and you will go about things in the canon sense of things, and you'll team up with Evan Bourne, you'll be friends with Evan Bourne again, and you will go against Jack Swagger. It's really fun to be a heel in this game, and even before that, just seeing Rey Mysterio act like a jerk, because this is something you just never really saw before. You know, the closest that Rey came to being a heel was in WCW when he was part of the Filthy Animals, but you never got to see Rey Mysterio quite like this. And the fact that we get to see it finally, it's really satisfying. And Jack Swagger even presents you with a mask that makes you look like a heel. Now, I really appreciate this attention to detail, because they could have just skipped over this and just, you know, let you wrestle in your regular attire. But no, they actually went the extra mile and gave Rey an awesome custom mask to fit in with his heel turn. Christian's is sort of okay, I guess. You know, it's an E and C reunion. Christian is part of the ECW brand, but he gets drafted to Smackdown, where he meets up with Edge, and they reform their classic tag team together. And it ends with Christian main eventing WrestleMania against Edge. I mean, I like this idea of having a reunion of Edge and Christian, and them having an epic match together. But this one doesn't have as many twists and turns. It doesn't really have anything too unexpected, and therefore it's a bit more drab than the rest of the Road to WrestleMania stories. So I would say most of these Road to WrestleMania stories are quite fun and interesting, and just a real blast to play through. Now, there are some interesting elements, such as being able to free roam backstage, which is something we hadn't seen in quite some time. The last time had been Shut Your Mouth. And this time it's in third person. And I really like the way how this looks. I know a lot of people don't like hub worlds in video games, but I do, and I think a lot of other people do. And this is something that they keep going back and forth with in WWE games, because in the next game in WWE 12, this feature was gone. And it's really a cool feature. You know, I really got a kick out of just running around backstage, and it is kind of limiting. I mean, you could go up to certain wrestlers backstage and you can talk to them, but only if you're really intended to speak to them. Some of them are just there for show. And you can get into fights with them, you can push them 3 times, but a lot of them tell you to just scram or get out of here. And you can actually level up in this game. Wow, RPG elements in a wrestling game? Yes, there is. Now, I don't get why there's different levels, because you'll like never even get to the second level, but for some reason you have multiple levels that you could level up to. Now, the only way you could ever possibly reach this is if you had just countless backstage fights with wrestlers every week in the story, and I don't even think there's enough fights to go around to do even that. But you can upgrade your striking, your grappling, your damage resistance, and even how fast you gain momentum. So that's an interesting feature. It was cool that they experimented with that at least. But there's something you should know which I didn't know at first, and that led to me having to play a lot of these stories 2 times over. And that's the challenge matches. Make sure you talk to everybody backstage because you can miss out on challenge matches. And you have to complete all of these hidden matches in order to be able to wrestle the legends that are awaiting you on WrestleMania night. And you'll be able to wrestle against people like Stone Cold, The Rock, and Terry Funk. And when you defeat them, you will unlock them. Now, the thing about this is there's nothing really telling you in the game what these challenge matches are for. You know that there's unlockables. There's an unlockable selection in the menu. But the legends wait for you in the green room, as I said, on WrestleMania night. But the only problem is there's never anybody in the green room. Every single night when you go in there, no one is ever in there. So why would you even bother checking it on WrestleMania night? It doesn't make any sense to me why they chose to put them there. Anyway, these are not the only wrestlers that you can unlock, because if you check out Universe Mode, which is very limiting, and this is nothing like the Universe Mode that we would see in WWE 12, which would be greatly improved, because it is such bare bones here. Now, they implemented Universe Mode into the single-player exhibition matches, but the only thing is, if you want to unlock any of the hidden characters, you can't customize anything in Universe Mode. You have to play the pre-selected matches, and they have to be singles matches. Now, some of these have to be title matches, others don't. But basically, once you wrestle enough matches or complete a certain requirement, Vince McMahon will come out and say, "Did you forget about your other opponent?" And then the unlockable wrestler will run out and you will wrestle them and then unlock them. So if you want to be able to play as characters such as Vladimir Kozlov, Ezekiel Jackson, or Zack Ryder, you will have to play quite a few matches in Universe Mode. And if you're anything like me, you could just do as I do, and you could play the required matches that you need to play and then skip past everything else, such as the tag matches. You will also need to play matches at certain arenas in order to unlock them. And this was something weird. I've never played a WWE game where the monthly pay-per-views had to be unlocked, and these are not even like old school arenas. These are pay-per-views from 2009 and 2008, but for some reason they are locked. And the Universe Mode has some of the most random cutscenes ever. For some reason, you'll have someone attacking you from behind with a lead pipe, but there'll be no follow-up to it the next week, which is really confusing. Also, you'll have wrestlers that are sitting in the front row and they purchased a ticket, but they belong to that show anyway. Now, this would kind of make sense if they were from the opposing brand, a la Goldberg coming to No Way Out to watch Brock Lesnar's match. I mean, that made sense, but here it doesn't. I mean, I don't know what the hell's going on in this Universe Mode half the time. It's just completely random. It's like they tried to give it some WWE TV presentation with, like, different things going on, but it's just all over the place. Thankfully, a lot of this would be fixed in WWE 12, which had a really good Universe Mode. Anyway, guys, that about does it for this retrospective. I hope you all enjoyed it. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bells to get all notifications when I post on my new videos. I want to thank all my patrons for your continued support, and stay tuned for more WWE game retrospectives. And guys, I will see you next time.